It looks like it's all right.
So we ready?
Yeah.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Sorry, this was kind of light real quick. I had a brain fart and actually went to Loudon and they said I was teaching, just not there. So I had to run up here real quick. So hello to everybody at Loudon again. Domestic violence. Of course, it's a real serious subject for law enforcement, but it can be for you guys as well. Now, a lot of what you guys are going to see on this PowerPoint has to deal with what law enforcement has to do and deal with, but the more you all are educated on what actually domestic violence is and how law enforcement recognizes the signs, the better you are at identifying it and to keep you all safe.
Okay, it ain't working against for us.
I just started broadcasting.
No, the
The
flip.
clicker's not working. Unless I'm hitting the wrong button.
That's right.
There we go. All right. You know, in law enforcement, we have to worry about being assaulted and going on a call, but you guys do as well, because you guys are at the same scenes that we are. Assaulted by the patient, assaulted by family members, and things like that. Recognizing those signs of something that's fixing to happen can save your life. Because who knows when we're going to be attacked? You don't. I worked a case years ago where I arrested a guy for domestic violence, and as I was putting him in the back of the car, his wife decided she didn't want him going to jail. She jumps on my back. Well, you'd think I just saved her from getting beat down by her husband, and all of a sudden it changes. And that's how volatile domestic violence can be. You know, in law enforcement, we still have to go in, we still have to take care of business and everything else. We have to continue doing our jobs just like you guys do. If you're fighting with a patient or something along those lines, you guys are still on the job. You guys are still having to treat the patient even though they're assaulting you or trying to assault you. Now, they use the term combat ready. I know, some of you I know, some of you I don't. I guess I should have introduced myself first. My name's AJ Oakley. I work for the Sheriff's Office. I've been in law enforcement for about 20 years. Some of you that I know, you've been on scene with me. You've had to treat the drunks, the violent drunks, the guys that are overdosed, all that other stuff. But you have to maintain a state of readiness. You can't just sit there. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but you just can't sit there and go, okay, law enforcement's here, fire department's here, I'm good to go. You have to be on your toes all the time around these subjects, because 1 minute it can be fine, and then the next minute you could be fighting for your life. I'll tell you this much, officers do pat downs, they search for stuff. Can people hide things anywhere?
Sure.
Absolutely. So it's great, it's good that you guys maintain a state of readiness so that you can be prepared to handle anything. You know, like I've been saying, our jobs kind of intermingle with each other. Is there times where we have to suppress our anger of what happens on the scene?
Yeah.
You know, you may be having to treat the suspect because he had done something, needs ambulance. There was one domestic I had. It wasn't funny, but it was. Guy got mad because his wife burnt the beans. He smacked her. She hit him with a crock pot. So, primary aggressor, husband, right? Husband had to get treated, taken to the ER. Then after he went to the ER, he had to go to jail. But any of those times, especially if we have to deal with those suspects, you know, he's going to jail, but we still have to treat him, no matter what happens. And of course, this deals with a lot about the victims of it. Sometimes our victims don't necessarily get the protection that they need. You know, there are such things as order protections and stuff out there that protect our victims, but does a piece of paper protect that person? No. And a lot of times in the criminal justice system, you'll have somebody that'll come in, it'll be their first offense, they'll take their anger management classes, they'll do all this, but what happens to the victim?
They're still scared.
Do what?
They're still scared.
They're still scared. It never, never, never fixes that fear that the victim has. The victim, in some cases, will carry that for the rest of their lives. In some cases, and the one part that I always ask myself is, why do they keep going back? There was a case several years ago when I was working midnights. Over the course of a year, I went to a domestic 3 times at the same house involving the exact 2 people. The 3rd time, she was in the ER with a gash in her head about 4 inches wide where he took her head and was slamming it against the fender of a car. And I asked the girl, I said, Tanya, I said, the next time, it's got worse ever since. And every time it'd go to court, she'd drop the charges. And now she's in the ER with her head split open. So next time, he's probably going to kill you. First time, she just had red marks. Next time, she had her eyes closed shut. Next time, big old gash in her forehead. It progressively gets worse. But there's really, unless she goes and receives counseling and learns that this stuff isn't okay. It's not okay. And some of them think that. I know it's hard for us, being in the emergency services, to understand it's, we know it's not okay for it to happen. But why would the victims want to think, hey, it's okay? I may have done something, I deserved it, stuff along those lines. Do what?
Dependency.
Dependency?
Security,
Security?
love,
Love?
When they grow up?
fear,
That's all they know.
That's a big part too. They might have grown up in.
correct?
But in some cases, it's up to us to help the victims, to get them pointed in the right direction. Whether it's a shelter, whether it's counseling, whether it's getting them in contact with the DA, and getting these people prosecuted, but ultimately our job is to protect the victims. And again, it's the same thing, who often receives less protection from the criminal justice system than other victims. Is there really restitution that's paid? Can that person be put back to where they were before the incident happened? No. If you have if somebody steals something from you, you can buy and replace that one item, right? But if somebody, violates you in this way, beats you down physically, emotionally, sexually, verbally, it's hard to rebuild that person back up. Of course, I know it says police officers and victims of domestic violence, but it kind of runs hand in hand. Some of you in here have had law enforcement experience, but it all runs hand in hand ultimately. Domestic violence, the act or threatened act of physical, sexual, psychological, economic abuse to maintain power and control over an individual by someone whom they have or have had an intimate relationship. So what does that exactly mean? Could it be boyfriend, girlfriend?
Yeah.
Be husband and wife?
Yes.
Ex-husband, ex-wife?
Yes.
Ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend?
Yeah.
Brother and sister?
Roommates?
Roommates, to a point. So it's pretty vague on the part. But it talks about physical, sexual, psychological, or economic abuse. Which is the hardest one to prove?
Psychological.
Somebody said psychological. Why? Do what?
There's no physical evidence of it.
I'm sorry, over the years I've had way too many guns going off in my head. If you say something and I ask you to repeat it, please don't be offended. But psychological, especially in today's society, how many of y'all seen some kids that use language to adults that we probably didn't use when we were growing up? Everybody, yeah!
Oh,
I know when I went to a call, there was a bunch of teenagers. Teenagers were calling me dude. When I was growing up, I never even thought about calling a police officer dude, or hey buddy, or bro, or anything else like that. But as society has started to change, so the way that we think how people should act, those of us that have been around for a while, we're like, okay, society. Going into houses, does everybody live the same? Are the houses clean? Are clean to some of our standards? No. They're cussing back and forth. The kids are cussing. Mom and dad's cussing. Yelling, screaming. Is that their way of life?
so it's normal to them.
Do what?
That's normal to them.
That's normal to them. So how hard would it be for us to go, okay, there's some psychological abuse there. Some of us might be going, they're kind of messed up, but is there psychological abuse going on there? It's normal for them, right? So that's why it's so hard for us to prove that they're being psychologically abused. But that's something that we need to look at, because if somebody that's going through the psychological abuse, can that lead to other things?
Yes.
Lead to them possibly taking their lives or attempting to take their lives? Absolutely. And it's a pattern that continues to go. In all types of domestic violence, it starts out as a pattern. You have the first pattern, which is pretty much like the honeymoon phase. Is everybody familiar with that? What's the honeymoon phase? Everything's great, right?
Those, I don't remember.
Everything's roses. Nothing's wrong whatsoever. But over time, what starts to happen?
Goes down
away.
It starts going downhill real quick. Types of domestic abuse. Physical abuse. What would be an example of physical abuse?
Hitting.
Hitting, smacking, pushing them,
Hitting with a crock pot.
hitting them, definitely. What about the threat of physical abuse? Would that fall under it?
Yeah, that fell under threatening direct action.
By threatening them? Emotional abuse. Falls under that psychological part, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think some examples of emotional abuse would be?
Degrading.
I'm sorry?
Degrading.
Degrading them? Anything else?
Name call.
Name calling? What else?
I guess with like if you're dealing with a small child, the withholding, any kind of emotional response to anything could also be emotional. Like neglect in that aspect, I guess you could say.
Instead of fear.
Fear? How about controlling the type of clothes they wear?
Okay.
Who they go, who they talk to? Now I know when we go, do what?
Some of that's just raising a teenager, though.
Well,
But what about an adult like an adult?
well, if it's an adult.
Like it's to adults.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between a parent controlling what their child does
Yes.
and a husband and wife controlling what they do. You're a smart man.
Hey, that's in a normal world.
That's in a normal. Well, let's just say this. Let's say, okay, husband, you all get called to a house, and we'll say a woman's down on the ground. You start asking questions, she won't answer, but the husband does. That's a big red flag, right? I know it is for us, and usually one of us will say, I'm not asking you, I'm asking her. Separate them. Could that be, that's a big red flag, could that be an emotional abuse?
Sure.
Not allowing her to speak, or vice versa. I've had male victims too, where you ask a question and the other party answers. And it's like, great, I'm glad you know, but I don't want to hear it from you, I want to hear it from them. So that's something that you can keep in your mind. The emotional and the psychological part kind of run hand in hand, but it is a type of domestic abuse. But the psychological part could be something like destroying a favorite item, threat to a dog or a pet, stuff along those lines. Then you have the sexual abuse. Different types: punching, hitting, pushing and shoving, biting, hair pulling, strangulation. What? What was that?
Dance date night.
Date night. Well, it's only physical abuse if it's unwanted.
All right, there you go.
Okay.
Somebody's got to complain, don't they?
What you do on your date night is what you do on your date night.
You gotta do it to other people.
What's some other things? That pretty much has a vast category, but who can think of some other stuff? Burning. Burning,
Cigarette burns.
cigarette burns,
Dipping for children,
do what?
dipping. Boiling water, dipping, baby.
What else? Anybody think of anything else?
Kicking.
Kicking? I just wanna see how long y'all go.
No.
A weekend. A guy got hit with a guitar
It was
because he
guitar.
kicked his dad's dog.
I arrested a mother and daughter one year on Thanksgiving for a food fight.
Hit the turkey leg.
No, it was a frozen turkey.
Oh, Lord.
It was actually pretty funny. What started out as a minor food fight turned into both of going to jail. Because mom got mad because daughter picked some food up and threw it at her trying to be funny. Well, mom gets mad, launches said frozen turkey at daughter. It hits the wall. Daughter gets mad in turn, goes after mama with a frying pan. So
That's escalating.
it's escalating. But at one point, you could be the primary aggressor, and then you can actually turn into the victim. So
Drinking beer, watching the parade when this is going on.
there's just some stuff you just can't make up.
Hey, man.
The emotional abuse, name calling, making derogatory or demanding comments, forcing the victim to perform degrading or humiliating acts. But like I said earlier, how often, especially in today's society, is some of this kind of an accepted norm now? Unfortunately, it is. But that's just how society is nowadays. People are more accepting to some of this stuff. More on the emotional abuse. Acting in ways to imply that the victim is crazy. How many times have we ever gotten in an argument with our significant other and we thought, you're just crazy?
I can't say you got that.
Why is that? Why would the primary aggressor in the domestic try to imply to us that the victim is crazy?
He wants to.
Put you back in
Just
this car.
Exactly that. Wants to discredit them. Oh, she's a drunk. Oh, he's a drunk. Oh, he's a pillhead. Oh, she's a pillhead. She's crazy. He's crazy. Talking out of their minds, right? Can that sometimes be an attempt to influence us in our decision making? Absolutely. Threats to kill the victim or the victim's family. Don't say nothing, or you're going to get it worse. There's sometimes where we get on scene and the injuries don't necessarily match the story. I think sometimes they think we're stupid and we don't know, or we can't see what's going on. But in there, in a lot of cases, the biggest part is if we're on scene and you all see something or you all are getting the story from the victim and it's not matching up, you all know more about the medical side than we do. Don't be afraid to tell one of us, hey, it's just these don't match what's going on, because then we can dig deeper into the story. We can start looking into things a lot more. Psychological abuse involves all aspects of the emotional abuse, like we talked about. At least one violent episode or attack on the victim in order to maintain impending threat of additional assault. So when the suspect does it the first time, how easy is it for them to do the second time? Especially if they got away with it the first time. Real easy. They can say something like, you call the police or you call an ambulance, it's going to be worse next time. I'll kill you. Or I'll kill them. I'll kill whoever comes into this house. That be it? Can a victim stay quiet to protect others? Absolutely. Destruction of property. All of us have a favorite object or possession that we own, right? Memento, something that means something to us. I know some of y'all have been in this career a long time, probably got some awards that you're proud of, or you may have a college degree hanging up on the wall or something like that. How emotionally hurt would you be if somebody went up to one of those items and destroyed it? Just out of meanness. Be mad, right? I got an expensive piece of paper at the house, college degree. I'd be very mad if somebody did something to that. Cost me about $60,000. Most expensive piece of paper I've ever owned. But I would be hurt because there's no replacing that. So, and again, that goes to the psychological part of it. They smash it because they know if somebody destroyed that, that person, if they live in your household, knows that means a lot to you, right? So how would your psychological state be at this time? Or you'd be mad, especially if you couldn't do nothing about it, right? You have that helpless feeling. Personal belongings or family heirlooms. Some of us have that stuff. It's been passed down. It means a lot to us. I have my grandfather's World War II medals. It's the only thing I have of my grandfather. If somebody destroyed those, I'd be heartbroken. My grandfather died when I was 1 year old, and that's the only thing I have of him is his World War II medals. Could never replace them, right? Irreplaceable. I mean, I'm sure I could buy to replace it, but these are what belong to him. Killing or threatening to kill a family pet. How many of us have pets that are like our kids? I got 2 English bulldogs at home. They're just like my kids. If somebody did something to them, I'd be very mad. You know, I don't have any kids of my own, but those are my kids. They're just like my kids. So, killing or threatening them, people can be attached to them. Same thing. It's all psychological. Let's get into that person to the point to where they're going to be broken down enough to where they don't want to respond or do anything to make that person mad. And it can be both male and female. Sexual abuse, physical attacks on the breast or genital area. When I was an MP on Fort Bragg, I had to work a domestic where a woman took a hot iron to the lower area of the man in a domestic. So it can go both ways. Do what? Well,
Hard for you, baby.
unwanted. Yeah. You know, and it just shows. You can't always go in with a bias of, okay, it's man versus woman. Because there's a bunch of times where it's been the exact opposite. Where it may have been an argument that started and a woman has done something. And I'll tell you what, some of the women that have done this, hell have no fury like a mad woman. Because they get violent.
Yeah, that's John Bob.
So it's not just one-sided. You have to go in, you have to be unbiased and everything else. But a part of the sexual abuse, the unwanted touching and stuff like this, you know, that can also go for the marriage part. For sexual relations, our marital rape. I worked a domestic shortly before I come off the road where it was all over. The man of the house was wanting sex. The woman was not wanting sex. That's how the domestic started. Well, when you're trying to get them to tell you how this thing started, it was kind of hard to get any of them to talk about it. So they're like, well, we just started arguing. Well, what were you arguing over? Well, we were just arguing. I got that. What were you arguing over? That's what started it. Or strangulation. Injuries from strangulation, like many injuries from domestic abuse, are sometimes undetectable. Sometimes they show up later on. Neck pain, sore throat. Obviously, y'all know more about the anatomical part of the neck than I do. You have the soft tissue there in the neck, you know, where the Adam's apple and stuff is. You know, obviously, when you choke somebody, you may have some redness there. But what's another sign that can cause redness in the neck?
Anger.
Anger. How about if they're emotional and crying? It causes them to have a red face, red neck area. Can you determine whether it's from strangulation or whether it's from them crying or being mad or angry?
Sometimes. It just depends on how severe the strangulation is, or, you know, or how hard they're, I mean, everybody's different, so you have different cases.
And it can be different. You know, I've had domestic cases where the injuries didn't show up till the next day. Where you don't see it, but then the next day, all of a sudden, it's like, hey, it's there. Hoarseness or loss of voice, damage to the throat area, vocal cords, difficulty swallowing. Somebody's been hit in the throat, kind of makes it difficult to swallow, or if there's damage. And neck swelling. Scratch marks, tiny red spots, a lot of other stuff. Look at where their wounds are. Do we know the difference between defensive and offensive wounds? Obviously, if somebody's covering up, where's their wounds going to be?
Back of their forearm.
Right back of their forearm. So look on their arms, look to see how they've been grabbed, around, especially around the wrist. Lightheaded or head rash. Fainting or unconsciousness. Everybody, any martial arts people in here? Anybody ever been choked out messing around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'd throw that in there. How'd you feel when you started coming out of it?
Awful headache.
Usually you get a bad headache and you kind of don't know what you're doing for a little bit, right? Sometimes you get a little nausea, a little vomiting going on, so everything starts getting back to normal again. Some other signs. And a lot of times, especially if we have a victim and that's been injured, we're going to call you all to the scene. And once you all get to the scene, you'll see some of this stuff. You'll be able to help us out as well. Because sometimes we may not know the extent of the injuries. And believe it or not, the extent of the person's injuries can actually increase the type of charge that we do. Obviously, if we can see signs where a person's been hit, but if we get a strangulation, that goes from a misdemeanor to a felony. So it goes to aggravated because of the strangulation part. So opening up that line of communication between the type of injuries and what's going on can actually help us charge the suspect. Of course, there's 3 types of strangulation: hanging, ligature or use of a cord, or manual strangulation. A few years ago, we actually had a domestic that was going on where when we opened the door to go into the house, we met the husband. Husband said, everything's okay, everything's okay. Well, we heard somebody gasping in the back bedroom. When we went back there, the guy actually had his wife on the ground and had a purse wrapped around her neck multiple times. And he was actually sitting on top of her, pulling on the purse, trying to kill her. But all this come from just a 911 hang-up call. She was able to dial 911 and drop the phone. Of course, obviously, he picked it up. But within the few minutes we were there, actually saved that woman's life. He wasn't expecting us. He thought he got the phone hung up first. But, and again on that, you know, the ligature marks, could be a cord, could be anything, could be a belt, could be anything. If they put anything around somebody's neck, it's a strangulation. I know some of you guys know this. This is stuff I teach the officers because we're not medical. We have to understand a portion of it. Of course, the most common, 11 pounds of pressure for 10 seconds can put the person unconscious. And we teach this a lot in our defensive tactics class. Because even though we don't use what they call the rear naked choke or the choke hold, I have to teach officers how to do it because are they going to put it on us? Absolutely. And it does not take long. Within 10 seconds, you can actually, if applied right, in 10 seconds, you can have somebody completely unconscious. It does not take long at all. So that's the biggest part of when I tell them, protect your neck, protect that area, because it doesn't take long. Because once you're unconscious, you're done. Again, with the rear naked choke or the choke hold, it just takes 4 pounds of pressure to completely block it off. So as you can see, once it's done, how long is it until they're completely out?
Only 10.
And then when they're completely out and they come to, are they necessarily going to remember everything? No. And this is just some medical facts. I'm not going to bore you all to death or try to explain it to you guys, because you probably know it better than I do. Who needs a break? Nobody? All right, we'll go for about another 15, 20 minutes. Take some break. Dangers of responding to domestics. Before we get into this, why don't you all tell me some of the dangers? What do you think?
Very volatile scene.
Very
It's
volatile.
went from calm to 60 miles an hour into the second.
What else?
I got bit by a dog last year and I didn't see that coming.
That was on a, yeah, I remember.
Usually never do.
Yeah.
Because if
What?
they're fighting, they're not paying attention to where the dogs are.
What
I
else?
don't know who the aggressor's gonna be. Because even if you've got the parents separated, you might have kids coming out, and they just see you there trying to hurt mom and dad.
Coming out of the woodwork, right? You may go to a call, you may show up on scene.
And if it's up in McGee Square, you might have families into it, coming from next door and the next door and the next door.
We're all-
But you're always the odd man out.
Yeah, exactly.
So instead of having 1-on-1 or now it's 2-on-1.
What happens when our nice shiny lights are flashing?
Oh, that's
They won't know
We
that.
sell
Kind of like a
tickets.
bug light,
We
right?
sell tickets, you know.
It just comes right in. So could you even have possibly problems with somebody that's not even involved in the domestic showing up? Family member showing up, they got a phone call off. Now not only do you have to deal with what's going on here, now all of a sudden you've got pissed off relative coming in or friend or somebody that wants to try to take care of business. What else we got?
Line of fire.
Line of fire?
Possibility of any weapon, I mean, there's weapons everywhere.
Oh yeah, you're in the South. Everybody got a gun.
Find the meth lab.
Yeah, you can go in and find a meth lab.
Oh, grandma had a muscle brother.
If I'm not too mistaken, I think me and you have been on one, Chief, where it started out as a domestic and ended up as a meth lab. So we have environmental hazards as well, right? Being aware of your surroundings. It's just some statistics for officers. 61 officers were killed responding to domestic violence calls between 1991 and 2000. And of the 56,054 officers that were assaulted during disturbances in 2000, 1/3 were answering domestic violence calls. It's because it's going right into a hotbed. And that's something that you all need to be particularly on your toes going in, especially if law enforcement is not there. Law enforcement, we come in, we can, for some reason, you guys can take care of yourself too, but when law enforcement's there, some people, they'll sit there and think twice before they do something. Why's that?
You're armed.
Because we're armed and we can actually
Yeah, you
take them to
shoot back,
jail,
yeah.
we can shoot back and we can do all that other stuff. So I don't know if there's, actually after teaching this class, do you all actually have anything that does the statistics of emergency services that get assaulted or something during calls? Or do you have any reporting?
I would answer that question because it happens, I think, a lot more often.
It's becoming more
There's a lot of times that we'll get a call for EMS assist, and we're walking into domestic violence, and nobody even knows nothing about. That they've not called y'all, they've not called for the police as a fight, it's just, she's fell and hurt herself, and you walk in and there it is.
You're right.
Normally, if it's a known domestic violence, we stage until law enforcement gets
Yeah.
it, but that's not always, that information's not always there.
may not be
That's just
related.
nature of
Right.
beast.
And even if it is, when you get into that environment, it can change in a second.
Right.
So then you're all on the same team that's trying to combat the aggressors.
But I'd actually like to see the statistics, because I'm sure it's probably, if not right up here, if not higher.
I'm sure it's somewhere, it's gotta be somewhere. It's like,
Well, there's a lot more, they're looking at it a lot more.
They are.
Because it's been more prevalent, I think they're going
Did you say that?
On the Those statistics come from the FBI, and it just does strictly law enforcement. They don't do emergency services or anything else like that, which they should.
there's a lot of.
And it's not reported, a lot of it's not reported.
Yeah.
We just move on to the next call,
Right.
don't even say
Somebody
anything
gets
about it.
assaulted, you hand them off, and you say, oh, by the way, they're gonna hit you. And that's
That's
as
it.
far as.
Hey, this 95-year-old woman just beat my
And I-
truck the whole way.
And I think it should be reported more. These are just the ones that have been reported.
Right.
Because when we actually do, when we do our reporting system, it actually it gets reported to the FBI, the TBI, and all these statistics get reported. But there's been plenty of times where you end up fighting with somebody, they get a punch in, you don't charge them with assault, but, but it'd be interesting to see the statistics.
I was sexually assaulted by a partner that happened.
Again, it's not assault.
Well, then how do you know the problem?
I did really.
It was only you, Dan.
Did you report it?
The lady tried to tuck her shirt into his pants.
It wasn't her shirt. She closed her hands on her.
Oh, Lord. Well, now we're gonna look into actually what domestic abuse is. We covered over some of the types of abuse, but this is actually what the law is. Abuse meaning inflicting or attempting to inflict physical injury on an adult or minor by other than accidental means, placing an adult or minor in fear of physical harm, physical restraint, malicious damage to the personal property of the abused party. This thing's not liking me.
Including inflicting.
Well,
Paul. Straighten them out there.
let's talk about this. So to have a domestic, do we actually need to have an actual assault take place?
No.
No. What is the only thing that needs to be established?
Perceived threat.
It's the perceived threat.
The perceived threat. Can a perceived threat become an actual threat or actually carried out?
Yes.
Absolutely. So if you're starting to hear some of these things going on, there should be some red flags going up really quick. If you guys go out on a call and you all of a sudden understand, or you're starting to get some stuff that's throwing some red flags up, don't hesitate to call law enforcement. Matter of fact, my suggestion would be call law enforcement as soon as you can. Because you don't want to be in the middle of this when all of a sudden one side or the other side decides to erupt. And a lot of times, does somebody really care? Obviously, you're all's uniforms, you don't wear the badges and stuff on, but like some people used to do a few years ago. But
Well, it's like in
No.
Knoxville, when we switched, we had those dark, navy blue uniforms that look exactly like the police, and especially at night.
they're not going to know a
They
difference.
they look.
They're not going to care. So if you think there is, call law enforcement. Get us there as soon as possible, and don't be afraid to tell us you need us 30 traffic or 33 traffic. Because if you all need help, we're coming. If you all need help quickly, we'll get there quickly. Obviously, an adult, 18 years of age, unless they're emancipated. Everybody knows what that means, right? Committing abuse against the victim. What's the types of abuse we have?
Physical, psychological,
Emotional,
sexual.
I think we got them all. The victim means any person who falls within these categories. All right, take you about a 10-minute break. These low lights, I see some eyes starting.
Right, see, boys.
From home, or the car, you know,
Yeah.
You got this.
Some of the things that you all can help us with, and actually help better our case. If you hear any statements or stuff that are being made that you think that we need to know about, because obviously we have people that want to talk to us. You guys have people that'll talk to you.
Probably.
Yeah, a lot more so. Again, like we talked about, the type of injuries that the person has, the extent of the injuries can't affect the type of charges we give them. And of course, the damage of the clothing, there's sometimes where we may not be able to see everything. Like if we have somebody that's bleeding, you all go to cut the clothing off and you see that the person's now being stabbed or there's been some puncture wounds through, that's something that we need to know about. And if you find any weapons on the victim or anything else like that. Now, obviously, we're not going to ask you all to do written statements on what they say, but just stuff that you hear, any spontaneous or utterances that they may say, or overheard conversations. This could be stuff that you guys can help us with. You know, whether typical assault wounds, this is the type of stuff we're looking for. Do you see any old injuries on there that we may need to know about? Something that can be picked up. Injuries in areas covered by clothing. There may be some times where you guys have to cut the clothing off and you may see something that we didn't see. Obviously, burns in unusual places, injuries to the head or face, spongy scalp, signs of strangulation. Do you see the wounds and think that they were actually defensive wounds on the victim or the offender? Scratches, bite marks, any of this stuff, we're very interested in seeing. Now, obviously, these are some stuff that can be part of domestics. A lot of this stuff actually increases the type of charge that we do. Different offensive wounds, gashes on the knuckles, bruises, cuts. But those can also be defensive wounds too. And that's about it. Does anybody have any questions about domestics? This is usually almost an all-day long course that we've crammed into about an hour.
We appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
It's actually 40 hours, but we break it down to 8 hours. So if you guys ever need anything, I do full-time training now for the sheriff's department. I'm not on patrol anymore. If you guys need any information or need anything done, please don't hesitate to give me a call. So if y'all don't have anything,
Do y'all have the pamphlets and stuff to give out?
like which pamphlets?
The
big things. Yeah, by law, we're required to do that.
Some of those on trucks.
Yeah, I think we can probably do that. I can get that. So usually by law, we actually have to give them to the victim before we leave the victim.
Sometimes we don't know until we're at the hospital what's actually going on, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, normally if the hospital has something like that, they're supposed to call us.
Well, we are too, but you know, we can give them pamphlets before you all get there.
We found in Knoxville, we did a pretty big study on this with the health department, probably 15 years ago, that James
have some interesting questions. We've never done this class before for EMS personnel and fire, so this should be a learning experience for both of us.
Just a little bit more. Good.
Good.
Is there a clicker?
Yes.
This little video is for the firemen, especially the guys in Bowden as well.
That looks like a run fall.
Station 2. Bishop. Is that the workout?
Yes.
That was one day, so I was in the gym.
Get that call, son.
Oh!
Hit that call, making him dollars.
I said, that's what you do, Wayne.
Yeah, I broke my neck, man.
I said, that's why you injured your hand.
That's it. That's what happened.
I don't know how you.
You see the video?
I'm sure you can find one on YouTube, but you poor,
Yeah.
There's a commercial on this one that gets into the video.
We're going to be talking about the drug thing. Let's start from over here. I mean, that's Morocco Black, isn't it? Yeah. After this, obviously, we're going to go down. How much would this cost you on the street? About 60, 70 pounds? But you'd probably be getting whipped off if you have to pay that much. I mean, you can get it cheaper than that. Okay. So what is the name for it? I mean, we all know it's called the Bionic, the Bomb, the Pump, the Black, the Herb, the Sexy, the Chronic, the Sweet Mary Jane, the Shit, the Bomb, the Ganja, the Reaper, the Bud, the Buddha, the Omicron, the Ill, the Maui Maui, the Method, the Pot, the Shake, the Shag, the Stress, the Fire, the Lucky. Is there any other terms that parents should be aware of? Lots of names. Sure. And what is its effect? You can go paranoid, which means you think people or things are coming at you. It makes your heart race. Your blood pressure can go low, so you can feel a bit woozy sometimes. It's got a lot of medical effects on the body. And is there any negative effects? Negative effects. Well, long term, there are negative effects. So if you wanted to get started, would you recommend this as a good first step? in your home, then that is cool, isn't it?
No, it's all illegal, it's all against the law.
But if you was using it for personal use, whatever, it's legal if you've got like half a kilo or something like that.
I would like to try that out.
Alright, what if it's your religion?
Then you have to convince the court it's your religion.
But let's say someone don't look like a Rasta, but they's got a couple of Bob Marley records, one of those hats with dress attached or whatever. Do you think that would get them off in the court?
Don't think so.
Alright, and which drugs is class A?
Class A drugs are mainly the heroin and cocaine type of drugs.
Does class A absolutely guarantee that they is better quality?
Nothing to do with quality. They're a total crap.
Okay, so what is these?
Chemical name is 3,4-methylene dioxymethamphetamine, which is why a lot of people call it ecstasy.
Ain't the most worrying thing about these though, they actually make you enjoy house music.
Yeah, you enjoy music? Yeah.
Is there a chemical inside it that actually make you dance like a belly?
It makes you dance.
What is that chemical called?
What is it? It's the ecstasy, it's the actual chemical itself.
How many E's can you take in one night and still be safe if you have to do it?
Some people can take 2 or 3 E's and no problems.
Because I has never ever taken any drugs and you can test me this. But I got a mate called David Dave and I'm going to say his family name obviously. But he said that he has taken 22 E's in one night.
Did he have a headache? Did he feel?
Well, he said it was like, he found it difficult to get to sleep. But the next day he was really buzzing and actually the people on the Egham to Ruislip bus said that he drove it better than he ever done it. So do you think it can work? Do you think it's ever right to give animals an E?
Well, if you want to know more about a substance, I'd rather you gave it to a rabbit or a rat rather than taking it yourself and testing it on yourself.
For real, what if they look sad? Do you think it's right to give your animal an E then?
Would help.
Because we made Jesse once fed one to his dog and it was mental and started barking and then tried to bone the cat. Is that kind of thing possible?
It's quite possible. Don't forget that one tablet is a lot for a dog.
For real. Which is the type of acid that actually makes you fly?
No acid makes you fly.
But in,
Acid can make you think you fly.
but in there one, because we made Dave said he took his time and he flew all around the room and then his mum told him to get the tickets on the shop and he actually flew there down at the flew back and was back in like 5 seconds or whatever and he got to buy cigarettes.
That's the answer. You think things happen to you. You may think you can fly, but your feet are still on the ground. They never leave the ground. And if you're not careful, you might trip up and hurt yourself.
So with the whole thing here, what is the lesson, the real lesson that people out there need to know?
Substances, chemicals, drugs affect the way your body works.
For real.
Your body is beautifully constructed.
Okay.
It works very, very well. If you take any of these things, you run a big risk of making it work not so well.
The filth, scum, pig, these are some of the terrible things the police is called. Other things include the fuzz and the fuzzy mum.
It's good. All right, guys, I think our purpose here today is just to go over some drug trends that we're seeing. There's just some stats for cocaine, heroin, morphine, other, which is oxycodone, most of your pills other than morphine, and methamphetamine for 2015. The highest is other because of our pills. Oxycodone and other pills like Vicodin and the rest of them are predominantly what we're seeing. Also, the methamphetamine that we're seeing at 2,079 is more predominantly crystal methamphetamine rather than meth labs, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Opioids, which we're going to talk about first, are our pills like the Vicodin, oxycodone, Percocet, fentanyl. Most of our pain clinics that are prescribing right now are the main suppliers for these drugs that we're seeing in East Tennessee as well as right here in Loudoun County. Here's the equivalents of those drugs. The codeine being the first, fentanyl and the morphine equivalent. So for fentanyl, a 10 milligram pill of morphine, it's 24 times as potent as a 10 milligram pill of morphine, fentanyl, and the rest of them are the same. Oxymorphone down here is 30 times more potent. I'm sure everybody probably knows, you guys know the drugs better than I do, what oxymorphone is. Probably one of our most popular drugs right now for prescribers to be prescribing to individuals that have pain. Does anybody know what the most effective pain medication is? Anybody have any idea? Yeah, ibuprofen. I mean, it's crazy what these people are prescribing, and we're going to talk about that a little further. I mean, why do we need all these other pain medications if you know, ibuprofen will solve our problem? And it's the cash. All right, the amount of money that's derived from pain medication is unbelievable. Whether you have TennCare or whether you're a person that has private insurance or you pay cash, everybody's profiting from these pills. Does anybody have any idea what a 20 milligram oxymorphone goes for on the street?
$20.
A minimum price right now is $80 for a 20 milligram pill. Yeah, I can't buy them on the street for less than $80. Usually they're at least $100. You go up to a 40 milligram pill, you get a price break. It's $150. So, and the common dosage that prescribers are giving right now, oxymorphone, is a minimum of 90 pills. I mean, that's a huge benefit to somebody that's getting those pills.
We're in the wrong business.
Yeah, they're making a fortune. How do we stop it? How do we get here? It's not going to show up correctly, but that's all right. The pain standards. I mean, you guys knew what they were before. Does anybody know what they were before? What are the pain standards that they asked? Or the standards for your vital signs? Temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, respiration. But now, I mean, I don't know if you guys ask when they get into the ambulance, but I know the doctors do when they get into the ER. It's what's your pain level? You know, what's your number? How bad do you feel? And it's always like an 8 or a 9. Like if I lost a leg, it might be an 8 or a 9. You know, but it's always super high, and it's because they want pain meds. Tennessee, we're number 3 right here.
Yay.
All right, we even move up even further per capita in 2011 to number 2. We're probably at least still number 2 in 2015. In Tennessee, I mean, our population is nowhere near what New York's is.
Who is that above us?
Delaware. Even smaller than we are.
That sounds good.
Must be nothing.
So for every 1 death, there are 10 treatment admissions for abuse, 32 emergency department visits for misuse or abuse, 130 people who abuse or are dependent, and 825 non-medical users. Don't have a prescription, never had a prescription, just use pills. We'll move on from that. All right, everybody knows where we are. We're right here. Okay, we're red back in 2007. Already in the red. Watch the rest of the counties. They start catching up to us. 2008, more in 29, 2010. Let me go back one. At 2015, I guarantee you the new chart that's going to come out is all red. One thing that might curb this a little bit is the restrictions in 2015. as to your controlled substances management databases for people getting prescriptions and people that are denied, and the feds going ahead and prosecuting doctors. That has really stepped up and changed people's outlook on prescriptions. But you can't judge pain. Whether you have all the x-rays in the world, all the CAT scans in the world, there's not any way to determine how much pain that person's in. So doctors kind of have an out. They can keep on prescribing as long as they're kind of go around what they see other doctors getting charged with and how they got charged in all the paperwork that we put through for these pain clinics, and try to somewhat curb that, because, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, we send undercovers in to pain clinics. We see how long the doctor visit lasts. We see how much of an actual examination that you get when you go in. All that stuff leads to their prosecution when we take the pain clinic down. But as long as you change your tactics a little bit, I mean, there's no way that we can keep up. Controlled substances database. All right, they have to check it now. And they have to check it again. It's one time per year thereafter for all their patients. All right, so we had a case about 2 weeks ago at Walgreens. I went in there to check somebody that just purchased pseudoephedrine, and the pharmacist, who was from Blount County, was there just filling in for the day, said, "Hey, check this out. I got these scripts, and I called the doctor's office. The doctor doesn't even have this person as a patient." He says, "The reason why I called," this was on January 7th of 2016. "The reason why I called is I got this script and it said January of 2015. And I called the doctor's office and said, hey, I know this is probably just a mistake just because we just changed it in 2016, but I want to confirm this prescription. And here's the patient's name, and can you please just confirm it so I can fill it?" Like, we don't even know who that woman is. We've never had her. That led to me finding 150 Loudoun County prescriptions she's filled in the last year. She had a prescription pad from the doctor's office, and all of these pills were Schedule IIs. 150 scripts. That's just in Loudoun. We have probably at least about the same in Knox County and some others in Sevierville. I mean, imagine how much money this woman made over the last year in pain pills. The next day, they called me and said she's here to pick up her prescription. She was actually filling scripts not only for herself, but for her son and her daughter, who are both in college, which led to their probably another 300 prescriptions on top of the 150 that she's filled. Now, that's not regular. Most times, this controlled substances database prevents a lot of that. And the tamper-proof prescription pads that they have, I could probably have them FedEx to me in about 24 hours. I could get as many prescription pads offline as I want. And they're all tamper-proof. So, I mean, there's no even reason for tamper-proof prescription pads. This is really interesting. The top 10 list, this is for oxycodone. And this is for bulk oxycodone that's distributed to these countries. Guatemala, 10 kilograms. Syrian Republic, 50 kilograms. Now we get into countries that we know. Canada, 115.5 kilograms. United Kingdom is 200 kilograms. Does anybody have any idea how much the United States gets? 500 kilograms? I wish I had t-shirts to give out. Does anybody else have a guess?
1,000.
1,000? 1,000 is about the top end? 79,700 kilograms of oxycodone distributed to the United States. I mean, ridiculous. It's unbelievable. In 2010, the normal prescription in Florida for oxycodone was 320 30-milligram oxycodone pills, 90 15-milligram oxycodone pills for what they call breakthrough pain, and then they'd give you some Xanax or Klonopin just to kind of mellow you out. That was a normal prescription in Florida. The pain clinics. All right. Pain clinic says at 2015. You see where we are. We got 5 clinics in Loudoun County. Okay. I mean, our population is nowhere compared to, I mean, what would you say? Davidson County should be right around here somewhere. They're 27. We'll look at the red again. Loudoun County, in the red. Again, why it's happening is the money. The doctors are benefit from this too. There's never a doctor at these facilities, okay? There's a nurse practitioner at these facilities. Commonly, prior to all these federal raids on these pain clinics, the nurse practitioner usually made an amount of money per patient. So the person that owns this clinic is not a doctor. They employ a doctor to supervise the nurse practitioner and the writing of the prescriptions, but that person gets paid usually $150 per person. I mean, why would you not see 300 people a day if you're making $150 per person, you know? All right, here's our newest, well, I wouldn't say our newest big trend, but one of the larger trends that seems to be occurring. Obviously, for some of us that are older, back in the 70s and 80s, this was really popular, heroin was. It kind of went away for a while because they had black tar heroin and they had, you know, heroin coming out of Afghanistan, and it just never, people were looking for, I guess, maybe a different high, I don't really know, or it might have been more difficult to get heroin in. But now we're seeing it again. Does everybody know what heroin is, I'm assuming? Probably don't have to explain all that. Majority of the heroin coming into Tennessee is coming from Mexico, which it never was before. All right, it was always Afghanistan or black tar heroin, all right, which did come from Mexico, but never in this form. Black tar heroin's like really sticky, difficult to deal with. You try to put it up in the needle, and it's really it's tough. I don't know if any of you guys have ever dealt with it, but it's really, even to process as evidence, it's difficult. Can be injected, stored, inhaled, sniffed, or smoked. Overdoses involve this term, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. Your body forgets to breathe. You go into that nod effect, and you're not getting oxygen to your brain any longer, right, which causes the majority of those overdoses. Physical dependence is almost inevitable. I mean, and serious physical dependence, like you are sick. I mean, there's nothing that can make your day any worse than needing heroin and can't finding it. Here's what they're cutting heroin with now. Everybody knows what fentanyl is. 20 to 30 times more potent than heroin. Can be absorbed through the skin or inhaled, and it's being trafficked in, just like heroin is, in kilo amounts into the United States from Mexico. And it's also being manufactured in clandestine labs here in the U.S. This stuff is disgusting. I mean, it's unbelievable. And here's what these dealers are doing. When you go to a major city like Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, everybody brands, these dealers all brand their heroin. So they're going to call it Turbo, or they're going to call it the Bomb, or they're going to call it something. And they're going to fold it up into these lotto tickets or magazine papers because it's a little, the texture is a little different than cocaine. You can't put it in a plastic bag. And they're going to brand it. They're going to put their stamp on it. And when you go to these major cities, the heroin users want to find the most potent heroin. In order to find the most potent heroin, somebody's got to die. So these heroin users will walk around to these different flop houses, and when they hear about somebody dying, they want to know what brand they were using. So the users will say, oh man, he used Turbo, and look, he died. Well, now everybody wants Turbo because it's the best stuff. It's the most potent. So what the dealers are doing is they're taking fentanyl, and they're mixing it in one package, one bindle, 1/10 of a gram, and the rest of it is all just heroin. And it's not pure heroin, but it's used with a cut besides fentanyl. And they're wanting that person to die with the Turbo stamp. So then everybody's going to want Turbo. So they're killing people just to make their brand popular and sell out. Here's the newest thing in Tennessee. Cookeville PD got 300 pills, Percocets, that contain fentanyl and steroids. They contain no Percocets. They said Percocet on them. They said 10-325, which is the marking for Percocet. They didn't have any Percocet in it. So you, or a person as a pill user that uses Percocets all day long, maybe takes 2 at a time, will buy these pills thinking they're Percocets. And they'll pay the Percocet price. And they'll take them and they'll die. So 300 recovered, 3 deaths in Putnam County from these specific pills. And what's even funnier is that we just got a pill press in Knoxville about 2 weeks ago. Somebody had a pill press sent in. So they're pressing these pills here in Tennessee, and they find the fentanyl and all the other components that they need, and they make the pills and put them out on the street because Percocets are so expensive. You know, I can't buy a 10 325 for probably about $15, but I can buy a kilo of fentanyl and make thousands of those pills and triple my money. They appear legitimate. Most buyers are not aware. The buyers were turning these pills in to the sheriff's department saying, hey, my buddy took these or I took these. They're not Percocets. Here, find out what's in them. And that's how they got onto it. That's how they figured it out. Several overdoses. The majority of the pill overdoses are in Davidson County and Putnam County. Here's the pills. Those are the Percocets. Nobody would know any different. The Xanax is up northeast where they found those. Those are oxycodone or Oxycontin pills down there where they were supposed to be Oxycontin pills. Those all contain fentanyl. Right here, Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. Former Deputy Brandon Dixon, or Corporal, he found those on a traffic stop. So, I mean, they're right here. You know, people are dying thinking that it's oxycodone. The doctor that takes them in believes it's oxycodone, you know, and they're fentanyl. And they're even not tested for them unless we request it. This is going to be important later. The little chemical makeup, that's a chemical makeup of fentanyl. About a year and a half ago, I went to a class in California. We talked about clandestine labs a little bit further than meth labs. We talked about labs like conversion labs. A conversion lab is when Mexican cartels bring up large amounts of liquid methamphetamine and they make it into crystal methamphetamine here. Another lab they talked about was fentanyl labs. I'm sure the fire guys, I don't know if they have any type of training on fentanyl labs. They had one in Atlanta, Georgia. And the lab, for the most part, is just to produce the drug, and it's a lot more elaborate than a meth lab that we would see here in Tennessee. You've got beakers, you've got heating sources, you've got somewhat of a guy that has to have some knowledge about chemistry. Anybody can shake dope. I mean, I could take you guys outside and shake a bottle of dope right now. I mean, it's that easy. This stuff is way more in-depth. Carfentanil is one step above fentanyl in the process, the chemistry process of making the drug. It's an analog of fentanyl, and it's 10,000 times more potent than 1 microgram of morphine. Does anybody know how many micrograms are in a milligram?
1,000.
There's 1,000. In 2002, at the Moscow theater crisis, in aerosol form, the government used it to try to subdue hostage takers. Governments make this stuff. It's kind of like a weapon of mass destruction, really. 125 people died. These people were innocent. And the reason why they died is they didn't have anything to counteract the drug. All right, so somebody that has some sort of an idea about how to do chemistry, but maybe not the complete package, could end up making this drug. And if we, as first responders, respond to the scene of one of these labs, for the most part, it's airborne once you open the door. We're all done. Without SCBAs, it's impossible. I mean, everybody that arrives within blocks would be done. You know, so if this ever comes to us, I mean, we've got a really, really serious problem. Meth labs are, I mean, a drop in the bucket compared to what this could be. So now this is difficult to make. Don't let me mislead you and say that, you know, it's really simple. You would have to be a chemist to make this. But somebody that was going to attempt to make a weapon of mass destruction, I mean, they could do it by way of fentanyl.
Yeah, but you're in redneck country. These rednecks will do anything.
True. Here's the difference. This is fentanyl. That's carfentanil. It's 2 extra oxygens on it. And there's not much difference. Everybody probably has questions about flocka or gravel. I heard that was a topic that people wanted to know more about. Flocka or gravel is bath salts on steroids. And we all heard about bath salts a couple of years ago when people eating faces and stuff like that. There's not much of a difference other than they took the time out in places like China to make it a little bit more appealing for you to purchase it. It's predominantly made in China and shipped over the United States. It's a highly addictive hallucinogenic. Effects can last from several hours to several days. They say, and that number's higher now, but they say 800 known deaths as a result of use, and can cause and will cause excited delirium. The majority of the excited delirium cases come from flocka or gravel. Don't mind that picture up in the corner. It's close to methamphetamine in its appearance. Okay, they changed the color too to make it more appealing to younger buyers. Same thing with the candies. They put it on candies, and you'll ingest it as a candy. If anybody were to put this in their phone, Google search, buy a PVP, all day long. There's 100 websites out there. Ship it to you. It's about $20 a gram. I could sell it on the street for about 100. So it's another way to make money, as long as it gets through customs and UPS and FedEx. All right, methamphetamine, first synthesized by a German chemist in 1887. They used it in the war. It was a way to get their soldiers to work longer, stay out longer periods of time without sleep. It's a Schedule II drug. Has legitimate medical use. The most common medical use is your amphetamine, which is Adderall. It's very similar to methamphetamine. Oops. This was a case in Roane County that we indicted. What was so great about these types of cases is if you purchase pseudoephedrine for the meth lab, like before you could only really get the cooks. You couldn't get the people that were buying the precursors for the cooks. On these types of cases, because it got so bad here, the U.S. Attorney's Office allowed us to indict everybody. If you bought pseudoephedrine for a meth cook knowingly, you went to federal prison. At this meth lab, I don't know if anybody heard about it, but we had a couple guys try to pick him up, and he lived in a trailer. And when the officers approached, they freaked out, and they had a oil lantern. It was cold at the time. And the oil lantern knocked over and caught the entire trailer on fire. And everybody started calling out that it was a bomb, that the whole place was booby-trapped. The bomb squad had to clear the entire trailer park. It was quite an ordeal. But in that one, 17 Roane County residents went to jail. That was actually went to federal prison. Meth lab at an apartment complex. 7 or 8 apartments burnt down. They had to evacuate the entire apartment complex. This was up in Claiborne County, another conspiracy to manufacture methamphetamine, 42 people. And now here we are today. Meth labs are almost a thing of the past. We had 2 in Harrison Hills subdivision 3 weeks ago. And that was a rarity. We don't really see them very often any longer. Now what we see is crystal methamphetamine, pretty much all of it. This was just a 75 in Knox County, and these guys had it hidden in a spare tire underneath a rental. So, I mean, it took the officers having to take the spare tire down and pull the spare tire apart from the rim and find the drugs concealed inside of it. This was the new law. Everybody heard about it on the news for expecting mothers that are using. It's still in effect now. And this is what it makes you do. You leave your child in the woods. Okay. Where we're at now, Mexican drug trafficking organizations, distribution, it's what we predominantly see. But we still have domestic labs, the shake and bake method, and the Smurf groups, the people that are out there buying the pseudo. At one point in time here in Tennessee, anybody could go out and buy as much pseudo as you wanted. I mean, we spent countless hours sitting at pharmacies watching people buy pseudoephedrine. At Rite Aid and Loudon, we arrested 21 people in one day. And that's arresting, clearing the parking lot of all law enforcement, and getting set up again. 21 people in one day that were buying pseudo. So now you can only buy 6 grams a month is your total amount, up to 6 grams a month. So majority of people only buy 1 box a month, which is a 3.6 gram box. And then they elicit their entire family to also buy 1 box a month. So where we could investigate earlier, several years ago, we could pull the logs on the registry to see who purchased pseudo. It was easy, no problem. You know, we could go to their house, we could knock on their door, and we could find a meth lab. Now they only buy 1 box, so we can't really identify them as targets. And all their family and all their friends are buying a box. You know, so it becomes much more difficult. Luckily for us, the Mexicans have stepped in and are now providing us with crystal methamphetamine, so we don't have to do as many labs. Lab seizures by month, 2012 to 2015. Look how high we were around here. This is 2013. 213 in 1 month. The numbers are all skewed up on the bottom for some reason. Here's where we are. I want to say this is December of 2015. 42 labs in the state. This started back here sometime in 2012. Loudoun County, right here, 8. We don't have to go through all those. Oh, here's the pseudo sales, and the numbers are all messed up again on the bottom. But they haven't gone down altogether. They've gone down quite a bit. Right here is probably 2013. Here's our top sellers. The closest one to us is Knoxville. And they're right there. They're number 15. It's 24-hour Walgreens. All right, everybody knows what meth is. Psychostimulant, powerful upper, affects the central nervous system, increases metabolism, heart rate, and blood pressure, increases body temperature, heart rate of breathing, produces euphoria, and it's poor man's cocaine. It's a lot cheaper than cocaine. You get high for much longer. Cocaine, a normal high is between 30 and an hour. Meth, you're high for 12, a good 12. You guys know all these. This PowerPoint is mostly for new agents or officers. We're seeing a lot more of this. We're even showing up on scenes where EMS and fire don't come out, and people are just going crazy, berserk. You know, and the jail's hardly taking them anymore. We were on something yesterday, and a guy's walking through the parking lot just flailing his arms. I mean, he's just unbelievably high, tweaking on meth. So methamphetamine is by far our biggest problem in Loudoun County right now. I mean, it's almost out of control. The effects. The paranoia thing is huge. You know, there was a guy climbing the rocks at Big Lots thinking he was a mountain climber a couple weeks ago. And he only had 1 arm on top of it. So he's climbing the rocks with 1 arm. He was also found at the he was at the house that had the shooting. Chris Hicks in Harrison Hills. Still high. Probably never came down from his high when we found him on the rocks. So I mean, it's affecting people exactly the way, you know, we thought it would. And they're using and they're continually using it, staying high, staying awake for 5-6 hours or 5-6 days at a time. You know, the violence is coming into play. You know, I don't think EMS was called the night of the shooting over there in Harrison Hills, but the way that played out was a supplier that we were investigating and his girlfriend had gotten back with a large amount of crystal methamphetamine. They arrived at the house and realized that the girlfriend's car had been broken into, and they stole some items of clothing. They took everybody hostage in the house in the basement, took all their cell phones and held them at gunpoint until they figured out who it was that was involved in the theft. They then began to beat on the girl that was involved, and another guy, who's not an upstanding citizen by any means, stepped in and then they started to assault him. Well, during all the melee, they called for reinforcements. These people were involved in the Aryan Brotherhood and Aryan Nation. The reinforcements came in. The guy broke free from being held captive in the basement. And as he's running across the front yard of the house where he's being held captive to the neighbor's house to try to get some help, the guys rolled up. And the girls that were in the house and friends with these guys started yelling that, he's running. He's running across the yard. So they jump out of their car, start running after him. The neighbor steps out on his porch and says, "What are you guys doing?" They said, "Oh, we're chasing a dog." He says, "BS," and he says, "I'm going to call the police." When he goes inside to call, or attempts to go inside to call the police, both individuals in the truck opened fire on his house. So they fired about 8 rounds, and then everybody kind of skedaddled. But he had 2 or 3 kids in the house at the time. So, that could have been real bad. How is it taken? It's taken the same way that heroin can be taken. You can orally ingest it, snort it, smoke it, heat and inhale vapor, and inject it. The smoking and the injection is the only way that you get the rush. You do not feel the rush any other way. Same thing with heroin. The immediate rush does not come unless you smoke it or inject it. So I know when I went to school, it was completely taboo for anybody to use a needle. You never heard about it. When you're in high school, when you're in college, needles are, it's disgusting. Now, everybody uses a needle, and it's for this purpose right here. The rush. You can't get the rush unless you use that needle, or you smoke it. So, needles, every day. Every day we're finding needles. The Harrison Hills, it was the most recent. We brought an investigator from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Department with us. We needed some people. Jeff Russell, a lot of you might know him. While he was searching, the trash contained tons and tons of needles. Most of them were contained inside water bottles, which is a lot of times what we store our needles in when we find them until we can find a sharps container. He was pulling them out of the trash. I take that back. He was pulling them out to put them in the sharps container, and the needle shot right through the bottle into his finger and drew blood. The traffic stop that led to that incident, everybody in the car had Hep C. A wake-up call for him and the rest of us in the way that we handle needles. Because we always, if it's in a bottle, it's safe. Well, there's no way. If that cap's not on that needle, it's coming through that bottle. Why is methamphetamine so popular? Again, when it was made in trailer parks and it was just, shake dope, it was always thought of as the lower class drug. Now that it's crystal, it's used by almost everybody. People that have a pill addiction are now moving to crystal methamphetamine. Number 1, it's cheaper. Number 2, the high lasts a lot longer. And number 3, how can you debate that? Look at the dopamine level for methamphetamine. Look how much higher you can get off of meth than anything else. If a classroom of addicts were sitting here, or people that had a tendency to use narcotics, and they saw this slide, why would they not leave here and try that drug? Cocaine doesn't even compare. We know all about all these. The meth mites might sound maybe a little bit different to you, but it's just that their skin crawls from being so high.
And they will literally pick their skin off.
They do. I'll show you a couple pictures of that here in a second. Sores on the arms and the face. A lot of that is from scratching. People have a misnomer that methamphetamine is dirty. It's not dirty. Crystal methamphetamine specifically is usually pure. We have turned in kilos of crystal meth here in the last few months to the DEA lab. The normal purity level of that drug is about 94 to 97% pure. It's purer than any cocaine you're going to get. I mean, the normal purity for cocaine is about 40%. So these people are using pure crystal methamphetamine. Now, granted, it doesn't have great effects on your body, as you can see by their teeth and their skin, but it's a pure drug. Here's some of those sores that you see. And they keep scratching them. They don't stop. And that's what happens. The infections. Scratching over and over again. And I mean, obviously, they're not usually in the cleanest environments to begin with. There's the sores on the face. And somebody that didn't know any better might think, man, the guy's just maybe got acne or something. You know, a lot of them can kind of cover them up as just being some sort of cut or acne on their face. But when you see a 30 or 40-year-old guy with stuff like this, I mean, there's no doubt he's using. Long-term effects. This one is typically what we see. The violence associated with it, and the violence after. You know, when they get off this drug and are so used to feeling high, you know, they have a tendency to be very short-tempered. Hepatitis B and C, we're seeing it everywhere. Everybody that we're talking to, I shouldn't say everybody, but a large number of people that we're talking to have Hep C. Long-term effects, the control subject and the meth user. The dopamine activity never goes back to normal after they're done, after they recover. And one of the main sources of that was the pseudoephedrine. These are, I'm sure everyone's seen the blister packs. It might be tough to see from back there. They actually put lot numbers on these now so we can track each individual blister pack. The lithium batteries. The pseudoephedrine pills. And that's pure pseudoephedrine. That's what's grounded down. What's so cool about the shake method, we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to grind our pills down. It became really popular to just shake though because there's so many less steps that you have to take. I mean, I can literally make methamphetamine in an hour. Some of the trash associated with them. This is either acetone or I'm not sure. Okay, I think most people have probably seen these. These are the shake bottles. There's two bottles involved with manufacturing meth. One is the shake bottle, one is the gasser. The easiest way to determine which one's which, if you guys come across one in a garbage can, the gasser has a hole in the cap. And there may or may not be a rubber tube attached to that hole. But if it's a clear cap like that with no hole, it's the shake bottle. Hopefully, here's the bottle. There's the gasser. Plastic tube coming out of the top. Components. Instead of using a Mountain Dew bottle, they decided to use a thermos as their gasser. Shake bottles. We don't need to show you all the places where we find meth labs at. Cars, hotels. Okay. Back to crystal just for a second. Just to give you guys an idea of what you're looking at if you do see it sitting out on a table or something. Crystal is like shards of glass, exactly the way it's described. The only difference that they've made now is they color it. This blue color is super popular here in East Tennessee. And they color it for a couple of reasons. One, because Breaking Bad made it blue. and two, because they can appeal to a younger crowd by making it different colors. Okay, so we've had cases with blue. We've also had cases with several other colors. One of the most popular, again, is orange. Orange dope is not made in the chemical process. Orange dope is made orange after. Blue dope is actually made in the chemical process blue. And what's his name from Breaking Bad? He made it. Yeah, Walter White. He made it blue. Okay. The signs of a meth lab. The garbage is our biggest tool. In order to get into the most recent, the Harrison Hills one, I had to follow that guy everywhere just to find out where he put his trash at. He had it in the back of his truck, and he'd always take it to the dump. That's a problem for us. I mean, we have to do what we have to do, but we go through people's trash all the time. So most of the agents don't enjoy doing it, but if we know of a meth lab, that's the first thing we do is we pull your trash. And just by pulling your trash, even if you conceal most of the stuff and try to burn it off, we'll know if you're cooking dope. We got lucky on this one because the vehicle that he uses to take his trash off got involved in a pursuit when he let somebody else borrow it. And I was involved in the pursuit, and after the pursuit, I didn't really care about the guy. I just wanted the trash in the back of the truck because it had meth components in it. Needless to say, we found the guy as well, but the trash helped me get into that house. Chemical odors, and we're going to talk about this in a couple minutes, but the odors really are almost a thing of the past. Everybody probably realizes, especially the fire people, that during the shake method, you put off ammonia gas. You put off that ammonia gas in such small amounts that it dissipates so quickly you don't often smell it. The other gas that's put off is hydrochloric acid. It's probably a little bit more potent than the ammonia gas, but still, if you're doing it inside the house, you're doing it at nighttime, you're not going to, I mean, these people aren't shaking 20 boxes a day. They're doing one, and then they're doing another one tomorrow. So not so much anymore in the chemical odors. So if your neighbor says they smell cat piss, and they say there's a meth lab next door, somebody's got a cat, because it doesn't smell like cat piss anymore at all. And I can't tell you how many phone calls we get about the neighbors. So if you would save them from calling me and just tell them that it's not a meth lab, they're probably involved in drugs, but the smell that they're smelling is not from a meth lab. Yeah, paranoid or odd behavior. They're out at all times of night. Windows covered. Extensive home security. One of the second houses that we hit there in Harrison Hills, he had a camera over his interior door inside the house. It wasn't even hooked up. It was just there for show. Equipment indicators. We'll go into those in a second. The stuff that you might see or that they might use. You know, and when you guys are responding to calls for service out at homes, fire, and EMS, they'll leave this stuff lying out. I mean, I can't tell you how many knock and talks I've done where I've looked over their shoulder and can see these components sitting in the living room. So, you know, they're not smart enough to hide them. And this guy's making a lot of dope, whoever this is. That's a huge gasser, and that's a lot of liquid in the 5-gallon bucket. We don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to use the blender to break down pills. We just put them in whole now. Okay, I want to talk about this for 1 second because this is misunderstood a lot. This is a one-pot shake bottle. Okay, you guys have probably, most of you have seen them, especially the fire department. And everyone seems to think that these things explode. They don't explode. The new method of shaking dope, there's no way for an explosion. And here's why. Inside this bottle right here is your cold packs. Everybody know that cold packs, you have to have it to make drugs, make methamphetamine. Okay, so your cold packs are in here, your Drano's in here. All this liquid right here is fuel. It's all, I mean, whatever type of fuel they're going to decide to use. And the pseudoephedrine is also contained in this bottle. This little red dot right here and these black marks are lithium strips. All right, so they take the batteries apart and they take these lithium strips, they pull the paper off of them, and they drop them in one by one. All right? This specific bottle is a Gatorade bottle or Powerade bottle, and it's got grooves in it. All right, so it's not smooth on the inside. The lithium only reacts with water. It doesn't react with fuel. Okay? So as they drop these lithium strips in, nothing happens, unless the guy forgot to dry the bottle out. If you forgot to dry the bottle out, there's going to be a problem. They put water in here. You see how this is red now? So we'll move up a little bit. Okay. Because this bottle has grooves, the lithium isn't moving around smoothly. And some drug makers or manufacturers believe that if they use the grooves, it'll agitate and it'll make better dope. Necessarily, I don't know whether it will or not. The lithium is moving around in the bottle, and they're adding small amounts of water as this process is going on. They're also gassing the bottle. All right, there is ammonia gas up top. Right? If you build up too much pressure, the bottle's going to pop, but nothing's going to burn unless the water. The water is the key to that burning. What happens in this bottle is it didn't explode, but the lithium got caught in the groove of that Gatorade bottle. The lithium burnt the plastic and shot out. Now, obviously, when the lithium shoots out of the bottle and it's on fire because it reacted with water, all the fuel that's in this bottle is going to burn, but nothing's going to explode. I mean, until the entire house catches on fire, and then something is going to happen. But there's no explosion of this bottle, all right? It's just what we call a catastrophic failure. The bottle failed, and that's what happens, okay? You still see there's no explosion, okay? The fire's down here because this is the lithium reacting now with water and oxygen, and once this fuel starts to run out, it's going to catch on fire, which it does. See, notice the melted plastic. Okay, there's no tear, there's no, nothing exploded. The bottle just melted. If that's playing, can you move it up like to here? See this white car pulling into the parking lot? Right here? This guy's gonna park. It's okay.
This is new.
Oh, it won't let you, it should pop, if you come down here, it doesn't give you a,
No.
Fast forward or something.
okay. We'll let it play. Does anybody have any questions about the shake method or about any of that burning stuff or any components that they might see that are involved? Nobody? Okay. This guy that parked over here, I won't let it, it'll run for like 3 minutes. He went to a local pharmacy and picked up some components and decided that the hospital was the best place for him to shake his dope. So he starts to mix his components, which obviously take a couple of minutes. And while sitting in the car, he has a catastrophic failure. He catches on fire, the interior of the car catches on fire, and he dumps out of the vehicle and burns until somebody from the hospital comes out and tries to help him. He didn't make it. All right, there's the box of pseudoephedrine that people are still buying. Does anybody know what these used to go for on the street, those boxes? Back in 2012 or so, 11, we were doing the stuff at Rite Aid. Nobody paid more than $50 a box. It's, for some reason now it's doubled. So it's $100 a box, or a gram of dope. You can get a gram of dope. 96 count of wall fed, is a 3.6 box. It'll yield about 3.5 grams of methamphetamine per box. There's the cold packs that we talked about. Camp fuel, the fuel, the batteries. This is the most dangerous process, and it reeks when you pull a battery apart. I don't recommend anybody doing it, but it is truly the most dangerous process, removing that lithium from that battery. That's the lithium. These are the protecting strips for the lithium. That's the lithium actually inside of the bottle. When this all bronzes is usually when you gas it. You'll watch it and it'll turn black and then it'll turn bronze and you'll keep on gassing it off. It's producing that ammonia gas. Shake bottle. That's a shake bottle after you take your dope off. I don't know if anybody really cares, but you make the gasser with muriatic acid and iodized salt. It'll produce a chemical reaction that'll start to produce a smoke that you then put over this bottle. And you'll run it over the fluid. You'll see the crystals of dope falling out of the pseudoephedrine. After you complete that, you'll take a couple coffee filters. That's why we always see coffee filters. And you'll run this through the coffee filter. What's left over is going to be your dope. So just the fluid that's at the top, the fuel, you'll run it over the coffee filter. What's left in that coffee filter is your dope. They'll also put those coffee filters inside of drinks. You know, we don't let anybody have any fluid, or if we're taking someone to jail or we're doing a search warrant, they can't drink anything. Everybody nowadays just puts the stuff inside of their drink. I mean, it's just a way for you to ingest it and not anybody realize what you're using. Hospitalizations for NAS in Tennessee for 2012. We are at 10.4 to 28 per 1,000. Everybody knows what NAS is. Neonatal abstinence syndrome, yes. It's when the children are addicted to drugs at birth. Cases, that's at 52 weeks, what they were estimated at, but we're at 856. And there's the kids, I mean, the innocent victims and all this. I only have stats up to 2013, 307. I know the fire department's helped us with some. We had that one over in Bucktown. There's 3 or 4 kids, I think, in that one. I'm not sure if that was you guys or the rescue squad. Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, all the associations that are with it. Quarantine properties. We do them all the time, guys. There is 1,442 sites have been quarantined. Only 436 have actually been cleaned up. These people don't pay to get these places cleaned up. When you buy a house cash, you have no idea it's got a lien against it that we have in order for you to not be able to sell that property. And it's extremely expensive to clean up these properties. Okay. Tip lines. We have one at the 9th Drug Task Force, a hotline for the meth task force. Hey, all those reports are anonymous. Even with ours, you don't even have to put your name. We don't go contacting you or anything like that. So it's completely anonymous. And there's my cell. If you guys come across something and you have a question about it or you want to report something, call me. If you don't get me, send me a text message and I'll call you back. We're out usually 20 hours out of a 24-hour day. We've always got agents, well, I shouldn't say always, but the majority of our agents are here in Loudoun County. We consist of Tennessee Bureau of Investigation drug agents, DA's office investigators, National Guard counter drug guys, and then people from local departments that we have assigned as task force officers. So if there's any questions you have, it still stays anonymous. Or you guys want to give us any tips, to get into houses, we're all about it. Yes?
I worked at a primary care physician and had 4 doctors, 2 of them were internal medicine. In order for their patients, like for them to prescribe on like a monthly basis, like with the prescription strength oxycodone and stuff like that, they would have to go on to the pharmaceutical website or something and pull a report. Do them the pill clinics, do they not have to do that, or I mean, are they supposed to and they just don't because then they don't make money?
No, they all do. As of 2015, they all have to. It's mandatory that everybody check that database, and then they re-up it once a year. So we'll get reports in commonly about people that are getting multiple prescriptions. It's decreased probably by 50% here in the last year because of that database, and because pain clinics know that we're watching them. And if they slip up and don't do that, they're subject to fines as well as imprisonment. So I think a lot of that has changed, but like anything else.
Because I know just in our office alone, I mean, we cut back a ton once our doctors had to do that. I mean, just because I was in the front office and they had to sign a clipboard to sign the narcotic prescriptions out.
Right.
I know we not necessarily caught, but we found, a lot of them, and we would, obviously have to report them and stuff, but I just wondered if the pain clinics had to do that as well.
Yeah, no, it's mandatory that everybody do it. They still slide by every once in a while, and we don't catch them for one reason or another, and they get multiple doctors and they're still getting prescriptions. Or the time frame is so short, like it's 27 days, but we charge them. If you get 2 prescriptions within a 30-day period, you're getting a felony. So it's almost not even optional with us now, just because the problem is so bad. And everybody, even not the district attorney's office, but in the grand scheme of things, we get attorneys come up to us all the time and say, hey, it's just pills. I mean, the pills are what's killing these people. You don't see people ODing from cocaine. You do from heroin, but the pills are the legitimate way that all these people can get high, and it's really difficult for us to track because there's no source of supply. With us, we work cases that go from local agencies all the way up to federal prosecution, and the end game is for us to get a source of supply. Somebody in another state, somebody in Mexico that's supplying these drugs. Well, who do we get? We get the doctor. I mean, I'm not going after the doctor. The feds can. But we don't have the resources or the money to be able to attack a doctor. So it's difficult. It's really hard for us to curb that problem. And because grandma realizes that she can make $5,000 a month extra by selling her pills. I mean, it happens every day. I mean, we don't like taking old people to jail, and the jail doesn't like taking them in. But how else do we stop it? It becomes a real dilemma for us. And you'd be surprised at how many grandma and grandpas are selling half or more of their medication every month.